It's Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key out of Newnan, Georgia. I'm so happy to be here. It's episode 712, and let's get this show started. What I am going to do is I put my headphones in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about high school football. I'm going to talk about college football. I'm also going to talk about the NFL. Had a busy weekend. I hope that you are sticking around for the show as we do have a great one. I'm just going to tell you about what's going on for this week. Today, I have the Glenwood Gators Coaches Show as we're going to recap that Lee Scott game. Fresh off a bye last week, Glenwood is getting ready to take on Valiant Cross this Friday at the Swamp. And then Thrift Barringer and I will be on Georgia Alabama Sports Live on Tuesday night for our Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. And we're just trying to get a feel for the high school football games, college football games, and the NFL games in and around the Chattahoochee Valley in the state of Georgia as well. As I just love talking about sports. I've been doing the whole sports broadcasting thing, well, for about 20 years now. When I started in college back in 1999, that was when I actually got my first job as a work-study job at Freed-Hardeman University, calling games for a 91.5 WFHC. And I also did have a sports talk show on the weekends, as well. As I love doing sports talk radio, and I really wanted to go in and do some hot sports takes. But we had a busy weekend of high school football. I happened to be at Kinnett Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Carver just lost a heartbreaker to Hapeville Charter, and that was just a tough game as they lose that one 34-26. And it was just a great feeling just to be on the sidelines and hearing just the sounds of the game, and the players and the emotion and the intensity, and the Carver fans were just incredible. That actually was my first Carver game, so I actually was glad I got to experience that. We got a busy week 7. I'm going to recap week 6 in high school football. My thoughts on college football: I'm going to talk about the Ole Miss Alabama game. I'm going to talk about Oregon silencing the critics over Colorado. And then we're going to talk about the new AP poll, the NFL. What is going on with the Atlanta Falcons? Their offense just did not show up in Detroit. In fact, they were actually on the plane. They did not get on the bus, and they didn't even show up to the stadium. That was an atrocious performance by the Atlanta Falcons. So let's go ahead and get into the show. I was at the campus of St. Appicelli Friday night as we did our high school game day. By the way, you can catch a replay of that here on the show. We had high school game day. The guest pickers, legendary broadcaster Dave Plata, and the athletic director for St. Appicelli, and the head basketball coach, Coach Corey Black, were on high school game day. And also special guest, the Columbus Lions general manager, Elise Snow. It was a great broadcast. Had a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun shadowing Dave Plata and Thrift Barringer for Viking Live. The game between Pacelli and Gatewood, by the way, Pacelli did win the game 35-0. Pacelli is on a 5-game win streak. And that game was simulcasted on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you can catch a replay of that on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page. Our Facebook page did get taken down on Thursday during the Westover Northside game. We created a new Facebook page, 3 times a charm. Go and like the Facebook page for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Special announcement on this show, like I always do every Tuesday at 8:30. I will be a guest on Rhino Radio's Penitentiary Show, the morning show that Ryan O'Neill does on this fine station on WQEE 99.1. Hey, I'm excited just to have a sports talk show where I could talk about everything that's going on in the world of sports and everything that's going on in the entertainment world. Hey, Taylor Swift and tight end Travis Kelce for the Kansas City Chiefs are dating. Yes, this is a big news in the entertainment industry. And Usher is going to perform at the halftime show for the Super Bowl in Vegas. This is a great Super Bowl performer. I think the Usher's going to do very well. He needs to bring on Lil Jon and Ludacris, and they need to remake that Yeah song because it's going to be the 20th anniversary of the song Yeah. That's right. It's going to be amazing. And I can't wait. And I can't wait to dive into everything that happened in the world of sports. Let's talk about high school football because Pacelli did win the game 35-0 over Gatewood. Christian Brown, a couple of touchdown passes, and Corvée James, big runs. Pacelli has won 5 straight games. They will have a bye. And then in 2 weeks, it's the battle for the Brucelli Jug as the Pacelli Vikings will take on the Brookstone Cougars, which, by the way, got a big road game win over Stratford Academy, 20-14. They even their record to 2-2. They will take on Whitfield Academy next week, getting ready for the battle of the Brucelli Jug. And I know that Brookstone and Pacelli, this is the best rivalry in Columbus. Can I just say this? I know that Carver and Spencer has a lot of tradition. This is it. This is the biggest rivalry in Columbus, Pacelli and Brookstone. And that is going to be in 2 weeks. Don't forget that Thrift Behringer and I will be Tuesday night, the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show. We will reveal where we are going to be this Friday. I can tell you right now, we're not going to have a game on Thursday night. There's no games on Thursday night in Columbus. So we are just not having a game Thursday night, but we will be somewhere Friday, and we will reveal that on Tuesday's show. Let's go ahead and get into a deep dive with all these games around the Chattahoochee Valley. Let's start down at Otis Spencer Stadium. Mary Persons, they're a 5A school out of Forsyth. No, I'm sorry. They're a 3A school out of Forsyth. My bad. They were taking on the Columbus Blue Devils. They won the game 55-0. And up at Kinnett Stadium, the Shaw Raiders, they evened their record to 3-3 after beating the Jordan Red Jackets 42-6. And then the biggest shocker really was Stars Mill beating Troup County 20-18, gave Troup County their first loss of the season. Troup County playing without Teo Todd, and Stars Mill, after beating LaGrange last week, they beat Troup County this week. They're off to a great start in their region, 2-0 on the year in their region. Callaway, they get the bounce back win, and they beat Redden by a score of 38-6. I feel bad that Callaway, they had a tough week. They had to forfeit their win against Cedartown. This was a statement win. They won on opening day, but they were playing an ineligible player, and they had to forfeit this game. So they end up getting the win. Heritage gets the win. 2 wins in a row for the Heritage Hawks. They defeat the Calvary Christian Knights 27-20. Now, Calvary's going to be fine. They're 3-3. All the teams they've lost to have been GIAA teams or GHSA teams. Calvary is going to be fine. Peach County, they get their first win of the season as they defeat the Hardaway Hawks. Hardaway falls to 0-6. An offensive battle. Wetumpka defeats Russell County 52-36. Auburn defeats Percy Julian 48-13. You had Opelika defeating Prattville 38-13. And then the Dothan Wolves down in Dothan, Alabama, they defeat Smith Station 66-0. Pike Road gets the win over Eufaula 48-30. The runners-up in 5A, Charles Henderson, gets the win over Beauregard. Manchester, they shut out the Chatco Panthers 46-0. Marion County, they get their third win of the season by defeating Greenville 24-21. In the battle between 2 top 5 teams, number 1 Schley County taking on number 2 Macon County in Class 1A Division 2. Schley County gets the win 34-7. Jake Calzanzada is a just great quarterback. Jalewis Solomon is his favorite target. Seeing the highlights, Schley County looked amazing. Taylor County is 3-1. How about those Taylor County Vikings as they get the win over Central Talbotton? And Reeltown, they get a win. They're still undefeated. They defeat Barber County by a score of 47-8. Laverne defeats the Lynette Panthers 18-6. Chambers Academy wins their fifth straight on the season, defeating Bessemer Academy 45-10. Now, Lee Scott Academy, they were able to bounce back and get the win over Macon East by a score of 56-7. Over in the Noonan area, it was a battle of two undefeated teams. The East Coweta Indians, 5-0 on the season, taking on the 4-1 Lambert Longhorns, and East Coweta loses in a heartbreak game, 23-22. Oh, so close. Sandy Creek, they go to 5-1, getting the 56-14 win over Jackson. And then we got the showdown down in Hamilton, Georgia this Friday night. The Sandy Creek Patriots, the defending 3A state champions, taking on the Harris County Tigers, which have been the surprise of the Chattahoochee Valley, 4-1 on the season for Harris County. Northgate, they go to 4-2. They get the win over Veterans, 35-14. And then the Flint River Wildcats getting the 40-0 win over Lakeside School. And Flint River is still undefeated. You know, Thrift and I were up in Woodbury, Georgia. We saw Flint River take on Calvary Christian. What an atmosphere there. That was absolutely incredible. All right, so week 7, we do have one Thursday night game that I want to talk about. LaGrange, who's 3-2 on the season, they are traveling to Riverdale, taking on the winless Riverdale team in a region game. The Jordan Red Jackets 0-5 on the season, taking on the Spencer Green Wave. That is a big region game. And then the Carver Tigers, Carver 2-3. They have lost 3 straight games. They're taking on the Columbus Blue Devils, who are 1-4. And that's going to be at Kinnett Stadium. That's going to be a very tough and key, crucial region game between Carver and Columbus. Brookstone is on the road against Whitfield Academy. Kendrick is on the road against Ace Charter. Kendrick is 2-3 after getting the big win over Central and Macon last week. Troup County is on the road taking on North Clayton. By the way, 4-2, very impressive record by North Clayton. Schley County still undefeated at 5-0, taking on the winless Chatco Panthers down in Casita. Columbia is on the road at Callaway Stadium, taking on the Callaway Cavaliers. And Shaw is going to be on the road, taking on the syrup makers of Cairo. Shaw is 3-3 on the year, taking on Cairo, who is 5-1. This is their first region game. Manchester is on the road down in Montezuma, taking on Macon County. Both teams are 4-1. The Lynette Panthers, 3-3, taking on the 4-1 Hanley Tigers. Pell City is taking on Eufaula. Eufaula is 3-2, by the way. Opelika, 3-2, taking on the runners up from 6A. Theodore, Pike Liberal Arts is taking on Notasulga. Valley at Russell County. I can go ahead and tease this. I will be at Russell County calling the Valley Russell County game. Russell County means a lot to me. I was the public address announcer there in 2021. Last year, I called all their play-by-play games for CTV Beam and the CW Jabama. So I know Russell County. I called that first game when Russell County played Harris County in week 1. This is really going to be a big game for me. And high school game day is going to be at Russell County too. So this is going to be exciting. Dadeville taking on Barber County. You got Auburn taking on the 5A champions, the Ramsey Rams. And then Prattville Christian is taking on Beulah. The Beulah Bobcats are 2-2 on the season. Benjamin Russell is taking on Smith Station in Smith Station. Smith Station hoping to get their first win of the season. It's really been tough sledding for the Smith Station Panthers. Valiant Cross is taking on Glenwood at the Swamp. Glenwood is 5-0. And finally, Lee Scott Academy is on the road taking on Autauga Academy. Both teams are 4-1. That's look at your high school football for week 7. So it's a week 6 review, week 7 preview. Don't forget that we're going to have the whole show on Tuesday night. Thrift Behringer and I, we might even go the full 2 hours talking nothing but high school football, college football, and the NFL. Let's go ahead and get into college football because I do have some thoughts on my mind about college football. I want to start with Auburn and Texas A&M because I don't think that the 27-10 loss by the Auburn Tigers to Texas A&M is the narrative on what Auburn is or capable is as a team, because they weren't expecting Max Johnson to throw 2 touchdown passes. I am a little worried about the Auburn offense. Peyton Thorne only had 44 yards passing and only 2 yards in the third quarter. There were too many times in the game where Auburn went 3 and out. Their defense kept them in the game. I expect Texas A&M to make big plays because they do have stars on offense and defense. Remember, 2 years ago, they had the #1 recruiting class, and this was a must-win game for Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator. Max Johnson really surprised everybody. So going forward, who's going to be the starting quarterback in Texas A&M? Is it going to be Connor Wegman or is it going to be Mac Johnson? We shall see. All right, Michigan and Rutgers. Jim Harbaugh does come back. And I don't know if Jim Harbaugh is going to make it to the NFL after this year. Michigan, they are now #2 in the AP poll. So I think that Michigan should be fine, but they do get the win over Rutgers 31-7. Still got a tough schedule, taking on Penn State, taking on Ohio State. Ohio State probably played in the game of the week, 17-14. Kyle McCord in that hostile environment in South Bend, down 14-10. You know how many times that he had a 3rd and 10, converted a 4th down, a 3rd and 16. Kyle McCord stepped up when it mattered the most. It actually helps when he has 2 NFL wide receivers. They're going to be NFL draft picks in the first round. As Kyle McCord gets the win for Ohio State. Remember, Notre Dame's defense actually stopped them that first time. They get the ball back. They did get 2 first downs, but they played a little conservative. They punt the football away back to Ohio State, and the rest was history. Ohio State was able to put it in at the goal line and go up 17-14, even though Notre Dame had only 10 men on the field. I don't know what was going on in that game, but it was a statement win for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And then Alabama, they defeat Ole Miss by a score of 24-10. And I am just shocked that Lane Kiffin's offense did not do anything. They did have one drive, Jackson Dart with the touchdown, but Bama's defense has really shown me that they could shut down the best and the most creative offenses in college football. And I think Alabama's defense is going to carry them. I still am not a believer in Alabama's offense. I think that Jalen Milroe still makes too many mistakes. He had just an ill-advised interception in the red zone. Alabama's red zone offense stalled in the first half, but they were able to get 2 big touchdowns, and they were able to shut down that Ole Miss high-powered offense led by Lane Kiffin. I think that it was just too much for Ole Miss. And I know that this was a win. This was a game that Ole Miss felt like they had to have. But Alabama's not going to lose 2 straight games at home. They're just not. They haven't done that in the Nick Saban era. So a good win for Alabama. We'll see what happens. All right, the game that was going on at the same time as Alabama, I had the double screen. I was watching Alabama and Ole Miss on the TV. I was watching Colorado and Oregon on the computer. And what was that? Colorado just decided not to show up against Oregon. Oregon was talking about Colorado disrespecting them by going to the 50-yard line and stomping on their logo. And Oregon just ran up the score on Colorado, 42-6. It wasn't even close. And there was a reason why Oregon was a 21-point favorite. The people in Vegas know what they're doing. And is the Cinderella story over for Colorado? Well, it's about to. It's starting to become that, especially since they play USC next week. Even though it's in Boulder, they're still not going to have Travis Hunter. I think that USC, even though they don't have a defense, USC is going to dominate and get that win. Shedeur Sanders, I don't know what happened, but he is no longer a Heisman contender. So that is something to keep an eye on. I still am a believer in Coach Prime. I think what he's doing is fascinating. They have exceeded expectations, but I just think that the national narrative of Colorado was they wanted this feel good story, and they were just the inferior team to Oregon. Oregon had better players, and Oregon came out to play. They were tired of the disrespect. Oregon wanted to prove that they were the better team, and that's why they were able to get the win. I feel bad for Clemson, especially the Clemson kicker missing that field goal attempt. Clemson had a shot to beat Florida State in Death Valley. Florida State survives, and I think Florida State now becomes a legitimate contender for the college football playoff. And rightfully so, Florida State starting to get back on track. They did win a national championship in 2013. Now the question is, because Texas won, Ohio State won, Michigan won, USC won, even though they gave up a lot of points to Arizona State, that defense is still suspect for USC. All these teams, and Oklahoma and Texas are undefeated. All these teams are undefeated, which begs the question, what if at the end of the year we have an undefeated Pac-12 team, Pac-12 champion, an undefeated ACC champion, an undefeated Big 12 champion, an undefeated Big 10 champion, and a one-loss SEC champion? Who gets into the college football playoff? Well, the SEC homer is going to say, well, the SEC one-loss team is going to get in above the other teams that went undefeated because they have the better strength of schedule. Well, not so fast. The Pac-12 looks great this year. I think that the Pac-12 could make the argument that the team that comes out of the Pac-12 that wins the conference championship should be going to the college football playoff. Some of the other games, Georgia, they did defeat UAB in the nightcap 49-21. And then how about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets? They get the 2 touchdowns from Haynes Keene. They defeat Wake Forest 30-16. Georgia Tech is now 2-2. They will take on Bowling Green at Bobby Dodd next week, and then they will travel down to Coral Gables to take on the U and the Miami Hurricanes. And when will I say that the U is back? Well, I think Miami has to beat Florida State and then compete for the ACC title in order for the U to be back. They're not quite there yet, but they will be, and I believe that Mario Cristobal is the right coach to get the University of Miami in the right direction on where they need to get to go. Some of the other local scores just in and around Georgia, as you had Mercer fall to Furman, and Georgia Southern. Wow. Georgia Southern gets the big win over Ball State. Georgia Southern, their only blemish was to Wisconsin. They could have won that game. So you have Georgia Southern who's 3-1. You have Georgia State 4-0. This is going to start to get interesting, especially in the upcoming weeks when Georgia Southern gets ready for Fun Belt Conference play. And then you also have LaGrange College, locally here in the Chattahoochee Valley. They fall to Huntington College 41-6. And that's about it. You have everything else going on. If you want me to talk about college football, I could talk about your team. Washington looks good. So the new AP poll is out. There's no surprise. Georgia is ranked number 1. Michigan ranked number 2. Texas number 3. Ohio State 4. Florida State is 5. Penn State 6 after beating Iowa. Washington moves up in the rankings after beating Cal. Michael Penix Jr., I think, is going to be a Heisman contender. USC falls 3 spots down to number 8. Oregon goes up 1 at number 9. And then Utah is number 10 after getting a big win over UCLA. So you have, 4 Pac-12 teams in the top 10. Now, they're ranked 7 through 10, but that's still very impressive. And you also have teams like Oklahoma, North Carolina, Duke, Miami, Washington State, all still undefeated. Missouri, Kansas, Fresno State, all undefeated as well. Missouri, Kansas, and Fresno State all crack the top 25. Florida and Tennessee still rolling. And I know that Oregon State, they fall 5 spots after losing to Washington State. Later on in the week, I will preview week 5 in college football. I will talk about teams that might be on upset alert. But really, if you're a college football fan, you should not be listening to me. By the way, if you're a big Georgia Tech fan, you should be listening to Bryce Kuhn. Bryce Kuhn knows everything there is to know about Georgia Tech. But if you're a big time college football fan, I recommend you listen to the Late Kick podcast with Josh Pate. It is aired on YouTube on Sunday nights, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. This is really what I look forward to. Sometimes I can't watch it live, so I'll watch the rebroadcast, or I will actually listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts in the car on the way to work. I'm just fascinated with the knowledge that Josh Pate has for college football, and it really is a great listen, especially if you're a fan of college football. Like myself, I like college football. I was born and raised in California. I started liking college football back in 2006. It grew on me, and I just been a Georgia Bulldog fan ever since. And they got a big one this weekend, taking on Auburn on the Plains. I know that Auburn did lose to Texas A&M, but this is the Deep South's oldest rivalry, and we got plenty of time to talk about it here on the show. All right, so right now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to break down the National Football League. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I'm so happy to be here. Just a reminder that you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. And we are brought to you by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. In fact, the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge is presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I'm so happy that you could be a part of this show. Do me a favor, write a 5-star review. You can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and go and like the Facebook page. I really appreciate all the support I can get. And the one thing about this show, people have been asking me, why don't you just merge the two shows? You're doing a lot of stuff with Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You still have the Sports Beat show that you've been doing almost 4 years now. In January, it's going to be 4 years. Look, I love doing the Sports Beat because I have creative control. I could talk about sports. I could say what's on my mind. And I love doing Georgia Alabama Sports Live with Thrift Behringer because we do a lot of not only live streaming content, we do coach shows, we do interviews, and we have a scoreboard show, and we talk about other sports that's happening outside of the Columbus area. It's really a fascinating show. And the reason why I did the Sports Beat presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live was so that I could provide great content to this radio station 5 days a week, because I have a show that's on this radio station 5 days a week from 2 to 3. So I want to try to give the best content that you deserve on the show. Let's get into the National Football League. I don't know what happened to the Atlanta Falcons. That offense was completely MIA going up to Ford Field, taking on the Detroit Lions. First of all, you run the ball 10 times to Bijan Robinson. Feed Bijan Robinson the rock. The Falcons need to get an identity, and it is a power run football team. But that offensive line cannot pass protect, as Desmond Ridder was sacked 7 times. In fact, it was the Falcons' defense that helped them stay in the game, and it was too much. They lose their first game of the season. They are now 2-1. They will take on the Jacksonville Jaguars across the pond, as that will kick off at 9:30 in the morning next Sunday. That's going to be a great game. Hopefully the Falcons can get a win and they can come back home and have a good showcase. The time is now. I'm tired of seeing back-to-back 7-10 seasons. Arthur Smith is supposed to be this great play caller, but the offense does not look dynamic. It's the defense that saves the Falcons. Where is the dynamic plays? Where's the creative play calling? Where's the 10 targets to Kyle Pitts and Drake London? You have all these weapons. You need to utilize them. So it is inexcusable that the Atlanta Falcons completely wet the bed on this game against the Detroit Lions. They really just had an abysmal performance offensively. Could be worse. Could be the Broncos defense giving up 70 points to the Dolphins. Yeah, that's not a typo. The Miami Dolphins put up 70 points on the Denver Broncos. That's the largest outcome of points since 1966. No team since 1966 had put up 70 points in an NFL game. I started thinking that was like a college game. I just could not believe that I saw that. 70 points. They really ran up the score. But if you're playing fantasy football and you're playing any one of those players on the Dolphins, man, I feel bad. The Buffalo Bills get the big win over the Washington Commanders, 37-3. You had the New Orleans Saints. Talk about a game that they had in the bag. They were up 17-0. The Green Bay Packers scored 18 unanswered points, and they drop the Saints for their first loss of the season. Green Bay goes to 2-1, and now they got a big game Thursday night against the Detroit Lions, a battle for the division. The Bears look terrible. The Vikings look terrible. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, they lose to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chicago Bears got blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs, which, by the way, they kept showing pictures of Taylor Swift up in the press box with Travis Kelce's mom. Boy, the entertainment industry has really been licking their chops. They've really wanted to cover this one for a long time. And you got it. You got what you wanted. But buyer beware. You don't want to have a situation like when Jessica Simpson was dating Tony Romo and she had the pink Tony Romo jersey and they kept showing her up in the press box. And then Jim Rome would jokingly say, Yoko Romo. No, you don't want that. The Houston Texans, big surprise win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. C.J. Stroud with 2 touchdown passes. Dameon Pierce had a good game running the football. The Seahawks keep the Panthers winless, defeating them 37-27. Biggest surprise of the day in the National Football League, the Dallas Cowboys. They lose to the Arizona Cardinals 26-16. The Cowboys defense gives up 28 points to Josh Dobbs and that Cardinals offense. Yes, I know this game was at home, but you're the Cowboys. The Pittsburgh Steelers do beat the Raiders 23-18, by the way. That was the Sunday night game. You have the Patriots getting their first win of the season. Bill Belichick seems to own the New York Jets. They beat the Jets 15-10, even though they say that Zach Wilson is still going to be the starting quarterback, even though Carson Wentz did reach out to the New York Jets. The Cleveland Browns, a big bounce-back win after they heard the news that Nick Chubb was going to be out for the season. There's good news, though. He did not tear his ACL. He tore his MCL. He's going to have surgery on it. The recovery time is 6 months. He'll be back in time for the 2024 season. So that is good news for Nick Chubb. They did sign Kareem Hunt. The Cleveland Browns do get the win over the Tennessee Titans 27-3. The Indianapolis Colts defeat the Baltimore Ravens in overtime 22-19. And then you also have, that's about it. So this week, I will give my rankings. And a spoiler alert, I know that we're prisoners of the moment. We look at these teams. We see the Miami Dolphins put up 70 points on the Denver Broncos, and we think, oh, the Dolphins are the best team in the NFL. I can't explain how the Dolphins were able to put up 70 points. Maybe the Broncos defense is just that bad. Anyway, it's too early to tell. I would not say the Miami Dolphins are a Super Bowl team just yet, but they have looked impressive. But you got to remember, there's also a team on the West Coast that beat the Giants on Thursday night that looks impressive as well. And I'm talking about the San Francisco 49ers. And I am calling out a big time media personality who has been disrespecting the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, I'm talking about Nick Wright. Nick Wright from First Things First is not a believer in Brock Purdy. I mean, are you kidding me? I could not believe I heard that. And look, I get that he is a sports personality. He's a lot better talent than me. And he is on Fox Sports. He is one of those sports personalities that has the hot sports take. He wants to be like Colin Cowherd. In fact, every chance Colin Cowherd is on vacation, he jumps to the opportunity to fill in for him. You know what I do when Nick Wright fills in for Colin Cowherd? I don't listen to him. I'm not a fan of Nick Wright. I know he's talented, but come on. Disrespecting Brock Purdy and saying that he is not elite. I mean, what are you talking about? I think it's just clickbait. I think he is just trying to have a hot sports take. But look, he is talented. Don't get me wrong. Nick Wright is talented. I'm just not a fan of Nick Wright. There are sports personalities out there I'm not a fan of, and that is okay. One person is Colin Cowherd's sidekick, Jason McIntyre. I don't like the fact that Jason McIntyre wants to steal the spotlight and be Colin Cowherd's co-host. I mean, anyway, that's my rant about the NFL. NFL Week 4, I will talk about NFL Week 4 on the show later this week. Here's what's on tap for this week. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to have Gabe Reynolds on. Now, Gabe is a Cowboys fan. I'm wondering how he's feeling about that loss to the Arizona Cardinals. The Alabama Crimson Tide do get a bounce-back win, defeating Ole Miss 24-10. I'm sure he is happy about that. And then before I close the show, I want to talk about some Major League Baseball because the Atlanta Braves did split a 2-game series with the Washington Nationals. They do pick up their 100th victory. They are 156, and they are currently 3.5 ahead of the Dodgers, and they are 2.5 ahead of the Baltimore Orioles for the best record in Major League Baseball. They're going to be without Max Fried for the rest of the regular season. Hopefully, they can get him back for the postseason. They need to have all their pitching healthy. Charlie Morton got hurt in the game against the Nationals. If they want to win the World Series, their pitching has got to be healthy and ready to go. Pitching Spencer Strider or Max Fried in Game 1 and Game 2, that is going to be the key. Yes, Bryce Elder could be left off the postseason roster, but I highly doubt it. I think that Bryce Elder could possibly get on, even if it's for a long reliever. I think that having a 4th and 5th starter on your postseason roster can be valuable. You could use that pitcher as a long reliever. Congratulations, Ronald Acuna Jr., 5th player in Major League Baseball history with 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases. He actually is the first 40-60 member, and he has 60 stolen bases, 40 home runs. So Ronald Acuna Jr. having an MVP season. I hope that they don't give it to Mookie Betts. I think that the Dodgers are the most overrated team in Major League Baseball. They only have the one World Series, and it was in the bubble. I just, you know how I feel about the Dodgers because I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. I can't stand the Dodgers. And it made me sick to my stomach. They beat the Giants on ESPN tonight in the bottom of the 9th inning. Some other sports to talk about. I mean, we got the WNBA playoffs going on. You got the Columbus, Georgia Vipers winning their championship down at Spencer High School yesterday. Fountain City FC playing at Otis Spencer Stadium, this outdoor soccer team in Columbus, part of the United Premier Soccer League. They were able to have a great game. A big shout out to Brandon Schwobel, who broadcasted that game. I was able to watch that for the Tri-City Latino Festival Tournament. A great outcome. Columbus State Soccer, they get the win over the weekend over Lander, a big conference win, and they are 2-0-1 in conference play, and they even their record to 500 as Columbus State trying to get back on track as they get ready for Peach Belt Conference play. And we also have NBA training camp that's going to be in a couple of weeks. The defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets, can they repeat? Or is it going to be another team? How are the Lakers looking? How are the Golden State Warriors going to play with Chris Paul? What are the Atlanta Hawks going to look like without John Collins as their power forward? I mean, I still think that having Sadiq Bey, AJ Griffin, I think that the new players for the Hawks are going to step up, and I really like Onyeka Okongwu as their starting center. And that backcourt of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, still an elite backcourt, and the Hawks hoping to get better than what they were able to do last year, only making it to the first round of the playoffs, but losing to the Boston Celtics. So last night, I had a fun night at the Land on the campus of St. Apicelli for the CB Hoops Perfect Practice Fall League, as Thrift Barons and I will be calling that next week as well. And the keynote speaker for their workshop was Columbus's own Charles Stone. He played basketball for the Columbus Blue Devils, averaged 19 points a game, went on to play for the Kennesaw State Owls, who made the NCAA tournament last year but lost to Xavier. They had a 13-point lead on Xavier, but Xavier was able to shut the door on the Kennesaw State Owls. Nunye, just a great defensive play toward the end. I got to interview Charles Stone. It was just a great interview. So you could check it out on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page. As we get ready to wrap up the show, I want to say it really has been a pleasure, being a part of your lives and doing this show. I can't think of a better thing to do than to air a show like this that I've been doing for well over 3 years now. In fact, in January, it's going to be 4 years. And I'm always busy, whether it's calling games for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. In the summertime, I call for the Columbus Chattahoochee Monsters. I'm going to cut down some things. I did not call any of the Columbus State soccer games the past week. I just had way too much stuff going on. They have an up-and-coming broadcaster who's actually a member of the baseball team who called the games, and I am ready to pass the torch for some of these young broadcasters to come in, to step in and call these games, because 2 years ago, that was me calling games for the Columbus Rapids, and now we have no idea if the Columbus Rapids are ever going to come back, because they now have the outdoor they do have the outdoor team, Fountain City FC, but the indoor team in the NISL, Foundry FC, have no idea what's going to happen with the schedule. But I still love the Columbus Rapids. I still have all my gear. We'll see how that happens. Don't forget that we do have our scoreboard show on Tuesday night at 7. Thrift Barringer, myself, on the call on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching another great episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I want to thank Ryan O'Neal back at the radio station for keeping it real. And don't forget that we got Braves Country today with Mac McGee and the Armchair Quarterbacks. That's coming up. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And we're gone.